Welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk this week. My name is Elyse and I am joined by the lovely Ginette. We're missing our little tripod Lisa, but we miss her and we look forward to when she's joining us back in a few weeks. I think she's off having family adventures, which is so lovely. But yeah, this week we wanted to talk about, actually, it kind of ties into a conversation that Ginette had that will be on her podcast on Monday next week. But talking about spiritual awakenings, I'm hearing a lot of talk about that right now. I think because of everything happening in the world, there's a lot going on, and we're really confronted with what's happening day to day. And the spiritual community, and some of the folks that I follow that really like to kind of dive into things and talk about the things that are happening on the earth, but also the kind of spirituality alongside of it and what that can look like. There's a lot of talk of like, we are going through massive ascension, we're going through massive awakenings. We've talked about this on Spirit Coffee Talk. You've talked about this as far as like 4 years of ascension, or 100 years of ascension in 4 years. So it's like everything that's been happening has been so fast and so furious, and people have been confronted with so many different things. There's been a lot of expansive experiences and awakenings, and also we can find them in really directive ways, like our trip in Maui. We had some really expansive experiences, and past trips, past, medicines, things like that. So, all to say, we're going to chat about awakening experiences, expansiveness, and what that's like. Because I know next week in your podcast, you guys talk about how do you integrate that? Like,
How do you
it's
deal?
one thing to go
How do
through
you
it, but then
deal?
after the fact, you're like, oh my God, what is my life? It feels like
Yeah.
you're just completely on a different planet. So,
Yeah.
what's that look like for you? How's that been? Easy breeze?
So yeah, no big deal. I think I think that's a good thing to point out in the beginning is that a spiritual awakening, something, and we're saying spiritual awakening, but it's like an awakening of consciousness, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not even in a super spiritual way as someone would define it, but what it does is it opens someone's mind to thinking much broader than they did before.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we have that experience, it changes our perception of reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the template, say we had this template of a reality that once was, no longer is. And that in itself can be really frightening. It can be exciting, but also terrifying, revealing. But then you also have to then respond to it. Essentially, what some people will do is they will run from it. Others will totally embrace it and try to figure it out. And there's a lot of fumbling along the way. But when I look back, I know when I look back now on like different significant moments of really changing my consciousness, in the moment it was scary, but it was also so freeing. And so for me, I think one of the first ones that was really significant for me was, I mean, I look back on it now and I'm like, yeah, it was kind of minor now based on what I know now. But at the time was when I saw my guide, my lifetime guide at the end of my hallway, and I've talked about this and it's in my book and stuff. Short version is I was doing laundry in my house by myself. And suddenly I could feel this energy come up. And then I heard my name and it was like, Ginette, look down the hall. Right. And I was like, oh my God. Right. Every word came out of my mouth. Terror. And he's like, look down the hall. And so I looked down the
Thank you.
hall and it was the figure of my guide standing there. And my cat was in front of him, looking up at him, her tail wagging. And so I knew that she saw him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I remember then blew open my consciousness of like, oh my gosh, my whole life, I haven't been making this up. And
Mm-hmm.
these times I thought I saw spirit or something crazy was happening was actually valid. And so, as exciting as that was, that opened the door for me to a new trajectory of exploring what is spirit. And so I did that by watching all the different like ghost hunter shows and all of these kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things to try and like gain foundational understanding. But what that started to do is put me in a different templated position with other people in my life because now I was interested in knowing about ghosts and things. And then there became that kind of jockeying for position with people where they're like, oh, do we make fun of her for this? Or, is she kind of going down a rabbit's hole? Do we need to pull her back? Is she going crazy? And there's a readjusting because of that moment of, oh my gosh, this is different. I'm going to explore it. It created a ripple that needs time to be readjusted. So I think for me, that would have been my first kind of major conscious experience of it, was then when it just really cracked open the door. How about you? What would you say was one of your first?
Yeah. Well, and I like what you started out with saying in that, because I kind of introed it as like, going on trips or having these massive experiences, but it can also be small, subtle things that are just like part of everyday life, like
Mhm.
leaving a job that, is really uncomfortable. For me, it was leaving a really unhealthy relationship. And it started the draw towards, like, for me, I didn't have, when I was younger, the same experience of seeing spirits or a guide or something like that, because for me it was, there was more of a clair cognizant kind of stream of consciousness channeling energy. But
Mhm.
what that would look like when I was younger is like I would just say things to people that was like the right thing to say to, and I mean, could have been a trauma response from, experiences when I was younger, who knows? But I think altogether it kind of formulated and opening up this aspect of me that just like knew what to say. And people be like, where did that come from? Why would you say that? And I'm like, oh, I'm smart. And,
Mhm.
pat myself on the back, just kind of half joking about it, never really taking it seriously. But what I would start to notice is that I would forget the thing that I would say. So someone would say, hey, what, can you repeat that? That was really like, that really felt helpful for me. And I'd be like, I don't know what it was. I'd try and like think it, and I couldn't do that. And
Mhm.
so that started cracking open more in this relationship that I was in, where I was really having these really strong knowings. And I know we're of the belief that like everybody has access to their guides, to their own intuition. You don't have to be special to, connect in with spirit. That's not something that, isn't available to everybody. It is. But it was this like cracking open of like really strong gut knowings. And I remember I was starting to get drawn into, because I was in such a turbulent time and I felt really disconnected from myself and I was really not in a healthy place. I was having this really intense draw to like meditation practices, and like Gabby Bernstein was one of the first people. And
Mhm.
like, she's somebody that I love aspects and don't necessarily align with aspects now, but she really opened the door and made it palatable for me and made it like, oh, this isn't like the things that I'm feeling, the draws that I'm having, the knowings that I'm having that are very different from what my current life experience is. I'm having a hard time ignoring them and making sense of them. And as time went on through this, relationship, when it finally ended and I kind of had the strength to step away from it and really garner that, it swung the door open to connecting with you and
Mhm.
like making these decisions, signing up for workshops and things that like, I don't know why I was doing that. I had no desire to like be specialized in this certain area, but I was like, oh, that'd be fun. And I just did it. And it led me to more people and more experiences that, for me, it was this kind of chunk of time that unfolded that I didn't even necessarily see it in the moment, but then, it would kind of come to a head. And all of a sudden I would look back and be like, holy shit, look at all that stuff that just happened that really doesn't make any logical sense. And yet here I found myself in a place where I'm like completely questioning what I think about the 3D world and how, how I make decisions and what feels good and what do I want in my life. And so it was this really like kind of fundamental, psychologically, sure, because I was doing a lot of healing work after this really unhealthy relationship. But as I was kind of taking off the layers of trauma, it was also helping me to reconnect with the inner parts of myself, which was my spirit and what felt important in my life. And that time like completely changed the trajectory. And what I remember finding so interesting is, as I was going down that road, a real kind of culminating point in that was um I signed up for a reading at I don't even remember who it was with. It was some random lady and it was really accurate. And she was saying lots of different things. And I remember I asked her about this relationship, and she said, and I didn't give her much information. I just said, like, I'm just kind of I'm a couple months out of this relationship. It's been really challenging. But like there's a lot going on. And she came to say that we had a past life together. And in that past life, I was, a witchy woo woo person. I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but that he was my friend. And because it was kind of at a time where it wasn't accepted and you could be, persecuted if you were found out to be doing these things. And I was sold out by him. And so looking back, how my life has changed, especially how the spiritual side of me opened up the more I pulled back from that relationship, it put these pieces together of like, wow, my soul was like, nope, we're not doing that here because we don't feel safe here. And it wasn't safe for a majority or multitude of reasons. But looking back now and kind of seeing the pieces, I'm like, wow, it was so, this step had to happen. And then this step had to happen. And it was this life event that happens to everybody at some point that culminated in a really big ascension process that I didn't necessarily see at the time. It just felt like chaos and turbulence and pain.
Yeah.
And now, and even, shortly after that, it was like, wow, this is changing my life. It's putting me on a new trajectory. And it did, physically in my life, but also in the way I saw the world and who I was, and my own, aspects of myself kind of opening up.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that amazing? Like relationships, and not just romantic ones, but like friends, family, acquaintances, even coworkers and stuff. Relationships are so divinely intertwined in our lives, or like placed in our lives for the purpose of showing us stuff. And it's not always hard things. Like for you, there was a lot of challenges in there. Sometimes there's certain people that can help us awaken because they're validating something really beautiful about us, or a gift or an ability or something like that too. But I think that I love that you brought that up, because relationships are such a key piece, right? Like, yeah. Okay. So I want to share one where I kind of fast forward a bit. So I didn't go from this experience of seeing that spirit in my hallway to this next one. There was years in between. So this next one, I was already practicing medium, already pretty comfortable. I already knew you by then. And it was one of the first trips I did to Egypt. So you and I did a lot of trips to Egypt together, but you weren't on this one. But you also had an experience in this same space after. So my experience, a significant one for me that, again, like at the time, it blew my mind. Now I get it, right? That integration time, which was a couple of years. But in Egypt at Karnak Temple in Luxor, there is this statue, this Sekhmet statue, the lion-headed goddess. And she's a little bit off the beaten path of like the temple grounds. So it's not, you have to know about her to know where to find her. And then you have to pay some guards to let you see her. And so I had been told about this, and I had been told that, and I may have shared this story on Spirit Coffee Talk already, but I had been told that those that had the ability to see, like see spirits, see in the higher realms, that the granite goddess of her would interact with you. And I remember when I heard this, I was like, okay, bring it on. I was being cocky, which I have learned, do not be cocky with spirit stuff. I have learned. But I was kind of cocky because I was like, as if granite's gonna talk to you. And I know that I can see stuff. So, I mean, I didn't say this out loud, but this was that narrative in my mind, right? And so we ended up finding it, and we go, and I get in the room and I look at this beautiful dark granite statue. And then this, yeah, that's it.
There she is.
Right there. There she is. So I feel this like pull from her all of a sudden to step forward. And I remember thinking like, well, this is getting real, right? And then before you know it, like she's talking to me. There's no substances involved. This was morning too, just like, anyways, I was drawn to her, and she invited me to put my hand on her arm. And so I put my hand on her arm, and then it was like instantly I was brought through what I understand now as creation. I saw all of creation, and it fast forwarded, like, you know, when you see cars driving through a city on like fast forward and it's like, zzz, 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 I was fast forwarded through creation, all of creation from the time of like molecules to where we are now on the planet. And maybe it even went further, but I understood it up until that point. Well, I understood it. I could recognize it to that point. And it was so fast and it was so intense. And then there was a point where it was kind of like she said, and I felt I need to let go. Like that's enough. My body had had enough, but I didn't let go because I was like, no, I can take it. I can see more. So my ego mind, my cognizant mind was like, or cognitive mind was like, no, let's see if we can get more. And then it literally put me to the ground. Like I literally, my knees caved in and then I was done on the ground by the time it was over. Because what it did is it moved through the neurocircuitry of my brain, and my brain was trying so hard to understand it all, to compartmentalize it, to organize it in a linear fashion, which we know that linear is just 3D, right? Time is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And so my brain essentially fried, and I spent the next at least 24 hours unable to really speak. I was just like staring off. I couldn't make conversation. I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't anything because there was so much consciousness that flew through my human attempt at understanding. I really should have let go when she said. That was one of my first lessons of learning. Like when spirit says that's enough, that's enough.
Boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries. And then I remember just sitting there and having to sit and integrate. And I finally had to surrender to not understanding why I was shown creation at that point. Like, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know why exactly I was being shown this. And that took me 24 hours to come back from the shock of it. It was like shock to my system. I think my body was in shock. But then it took probably 3 to maybe 5 years to understand the magnitude of it. And to be honest, I bet I don't understand it all yet. I bet 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'll say, oh, I thought I understood it then, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when you cross over to the other side one day, you're going to be like, oh, that was like
yeah,
of this.
Exactly.
Cute little part that you understood, but you thought you understood it all. Yeah.
And I think if I would have had or known at that time to try and find somebody to talk about what I experienced with, or like if we were now, or if we were then what we are now, we would have had an easier time facilitating each other and communicating about it, but we didn't understand what we know now to do that then. So that's why, again, like I find these moments of spiritual awakening really push us out of our known comfort zone, where we then don't quite know what to do with it. But I think so many more people now are awakening to the understandings of what can be in those experiences, that there's more, it's easier to find the support to help unpack it.
Yeah. And I think, on that note, that's where trusted community is so important, and having, safe spaces, grounded spaces to talk about those things, because it can be, um, we want to mind our human mind and our traumas and our psychology, and that we are living in a 3D world with a lot happening, and having a safe space to kind of deconstruct those things in a grounded way, I think is really important, because it can feel like I'm questioning everything. And that's like, we want to be cautious with that, especially when we've been holding a lot already. And it's not to say that it's a scary thing or something that you need to be afraid of at all, but it's like, when we think of how like challenging certain situations can be, just like I was saying, the relationship that I was leaving, and how it took me years to move through different layers of that. And I didn't date for a long time after that, because I felt like I really needed to do a lot of healing work from that, from a human perspective, let alone the kind of spiritual side of it. And from that place, I too, to share with a similar experience with that statue and that energy. It's one of the craziest things, because you go to these places and you see these magnificent statues and you see these magnificent buildings and creations. Like buildings doesn't even feel like a
Yeah, right.
temples and like
True.
structures. Like it's so awe-inspiring. And then you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then you walk into this like teensy little dark, dingy room. Like there was no lights in there. You could see in that picture that I showed, there was just kind of one little beam shining down on her. But
Mhm.
like you walk into this teensy room kind of in the middle or like off to the side in the middle of nothing, and you're like, it's just a statue. Like I've seen way better, right? It's that cocky, like, no, that's cute. It's a
Totally.
cat. Like,
Yeah.
you know. Oh,
That would look nice in my front entry,
yeah.
right?
Ooh, where can I get one? But when you like, I mean, I had multiple experiences with her, as did you, and we would go. And I remember the first time I went in there, it was like I was standing in front of somebody that I was like, oh, oh, am I allowed to be here? Like I felt uncomfortable, and I just kind of like stood
Mhm.
at the back of the room, like, what do I do? I don't know. I don't know what to like. Do I touch her? And I felt like I couldn't go close to the statue until there was all of a sudden this like, okay, now you can approach. And
Mhm.
it felt like you were standing in front of a person, like it
Mhm.
just, and like a powerful person, like I'm standing in front of a queen or a king or somebody like really powerful that you like revere and are like, oh, and I don't get like that with people. Like
Yeah.
I just think we're all humans and whatever. um but maybe if I met Taylor Swift, maybe I would. I don't know.
Maybe.
Don't want to say I wouldn't, um, but yeah, it was just this like really intense, like, oh, that's a person, and then you're like, your brain's like, no, it's not, it's a rock, and like
Mhm.
you kind of go through this moment of like, shit, what is happening here? Like it's hard. It can be hard to reconcile, and I remember, I can't remember if it was you that mentioned this or and I don't even remember at what point, like which time I saw her, that there was this understanding, but it was this idea that like this statue will communicate things that you need to know. So to not have expectation
Mhm.
around what that experience is going to be like, right? You saw creation one of the first times that you saw her. Um, I had a very different experience where it was like this really intense energy exchange and this kind of um, infinity symbol process through the two of us. And that same thing, I didn't feel like I could touch her and the stone until I felt called to, or like it was okay. And it was kind of this energy exchange. And to be honest, I know there was things that was said, but I don't fully remember it. All I can remember is that kind of experience. And then, each time I would see her, it was like more pieces of understanding who I am and what my, soul's lineage is and why I'm here, and certain aspects of myself that I really couldn't understand or reconcile. And
Mhm.
it's why I think like being human can be so interesting, because there's so many things that make us, right? Like you look at your soul's history, you look at your astrology, you look at the family system that you were born into, you look at your economic and societal structures that you're born into, you look at the traumas that you experience, and all of those things kind of make this really crazy web of like who we are as people and how we show up in the world. And I remember seeing her and having this experience. And I think this can happen with a lot of excuse me, awakening experiences, is like, I don't know what's happening with my throat right now. Oh my god. Hold on.
Pause and break.
I don't know what that is. She's like, stop talking about me.
Totally, right?
Like, oh, holy man. I have no idea what that was. It was like this like dry spot. I could feel like
Yeah.
just creeping in.
Oh,
Um, I don't even remember what I was saying now.
spiritual awakening, her inviting you in. Uh, huh,
I guess
weird.
that's it.
We're,
I'm not
end of
supposed to
story.
continue with that tangent anymore.
Spirit just
Oh,
like pulled your voice out. They're like, nope.
you're done. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, thanks. I did say, I was like, I don't know what I want to share. Maybe I'll just like let them tell me what to say. They're like, stop that story. I don't even know
No,
why. It's not like there's some juicy ending
no,
to it. And I was like,
it's not.
oh, that's it.
You were talking about though how like she shows you what it is you need to see,
Mm-hmm.
because I know everybody on various trips when we've been there would all experience something very different. And
Mm-hmm.
so we began to know that and to kind of give people that heads up, like, just because I saw this doesn't mean you're going to see that. And
Mm-hmm.
some people enjoyed their experience. Others, it was very like in their face about maybe something that needed to change. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing with spiritual awakenings. And I think this is actually a neat tangent from what you were saying. spiritual awakenings, whether big or small, will point you in the direction you need. And sometimes you will be pointed in a moment of awe and wonder. And sometimes you'll be pointed by confronting something you're avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit world, your guides, your consciousness will bring it to you in a way that leaves a big enough impact that you need to integrate it.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, if it was just cool and then we carry on, or if it was just like, moo, didn't like that, bye.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't do what it needed to be, or it didn't do what it needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I remember coming home from one of those trips, and I remember like driving to work and like not knowing where to go, or like feeling like I was living in a different reality. Like it's like everything was the same, but my house felt different. My car
Mm-hmm.
felt, my dog felt like little teensy things that it felt foreign. And it took a little bit of time before I felt like I was back in the groove of it. And I had to really like sit with, and I know this is part of your conversation next week, but sit with like where I was and like
Mm-hmm.
acclimatize almost
Mm-hmm.
to what was happening. And that can even create a little bit of discomfort. And I know we even talked about that. I'm curious if there was any, I mean, I know there was, but that you want to share in Maui, because I think it can look so different depending on the circumstance, depending on where you're at in your life, depending on the space that you're going. It doesn't even have to be like a sacred space, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes those do hold really wonderful awakenings. And if you're called to them, then like follow that.
Mm-hmm.
But also it can, like we were saying, it can be the kind of mundane 3D life things that just feel like part of life.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I'll share a little bit more in a minute, but having the dynamic of like four women being together and like all representing different elements, and like it was a completely different experience than other trips or awakening experiences that I had had.
Mm-hmm.
But has been one of the hardest to integrate, and I feel like I'm still like
Okay.
figuring that out and integrating it. And
Interesting.
so yeah, so I'm curious if there was anything from that for you that
Oh, with Maui, I mean, there were so many parts, but what I found with Maui is that it was so much more gentle for me
hmm,
than any of the other experiences I've had. Normally, I've had experiences that are a little bit more in my face, maybe because I needed it at the
hmm,
time, maybe because there was still that cocky piece or that like, show me, spirit, like prove it, or maybe like that energy. And maybe I just needed it to be more bold, more confronting. Whereas I feel like now I have a deeper respect for the subtleties. So maybe they can bring it in a little bit more subtle. But I do know that with Maui, one of the things that was really cool was I've always been connected to water. I mean, I talk about water all the time.
hmm.
You know how many showers I took in Maui. I was like, I'm just going to go take a sacred
I
shower.
gotta
I'll
go
be
have a
back.
shower, eat my apple, and have a
Right?
shower.
Eat my apple in the shower. I'm going to go stand in the water. I'm going to go get in the ocean. Um, what I understood though was it was more than me just liking water or finding it sacred. I realized with Maui it's something that has always run through me. And it brought me back to a memory of when I was in grade 6 and we went on this summer camping trip with our class. And I remember we were jumping off the dock and swimming in the water. And I remember having this absolutely sacred spiritual awakening. I know the words to define it now. At the time, I was just like, this most amazing experience. And I
Hmm.
didn't really tell anyone, but to me, like it's vivid in my mind. And all it was me jumping in the water, opening my eyes while I'm underwater, having the sunlight shine through the water. And I felt as though I could hold my breath endlessly.
Hmm.
And everything was silent. And I was floating in the water. And I felt one with water. I remember being like, I know this. And so there was times I was like, maybe that represents like the womb of the mother as I got
Hmm.
older. I'm like, maybe I'm remembering that. And but what I realize now, especially with Maui and being in the water in Maui and just like loving the water, and I would open my eyes underwater in the salty ocean. And it was just like I needed to be in the water in that way. And I realized that it's like this element that although I'm more air element and earth element in terms of my birth chart, even my NDE chart, um, the sacredness and the consciousness in water is something that literally runs through me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that I have had water lifetimes where, like, say I'm on another planet where it's a water planet, or maybe I've been a fish. I know I've been a sand dollar of all things. Um, like, water is so significant to me. And so Maui was just like this, like I said, it wasn't bold, but it was more like, remember that when you were in grade 6? This is why.
Mm-hmm.
Honor it. Honor your shower. It's a shower and you're in a tiled room. But what's the difference of being in the shower to when you were in the waterfalls that we went and hiked and found,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what's the difference when you're in the ocean water? Like, it was about harmonizing and making sacred any moment that I wanted with water because it's
Mm-hmm.
consciousness that runs with me. So, like, that was one that was profound, but I didn't need to integrate it. It was one of those that I could be like, oh, I get it. And now I just take it with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
I
about
love
you?
that. Yeah, it was a gentle trip for me as well, other than the headaches at first. But what was so
Mm,
interesting is that I'll get really bad, I get headaches in general, but really bad like energy headaches. And the first couple days were just brutal. And I kept thinking, like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this trip with the heat and like I'm just getting headaches all the time. And I don't want to get a really severe migraine. And so that was intense. But that I kind of had a conversation with Spirit to be like, you guys gotta just lay off on that a little bit. Um, but from a understandings perspective for me it was gentle in the same way, and really like lots of pieces coming together, like things that I had been working through on my own or through the last couple years that have come up, which actually there's another awakening experience that I'll share in a minute. But from that time, like there's just been a lot of different things in my life that I've been working through and holding space for, and talking with Spirit about, and journaling on, and doing like my own reflection work. And um, a lot of those pieces kind of came together as far as why, or what's the underlying piece of this, or why the struggle, why the challenge in this area, and kind of coming to terms with who I am and what that means for me. And what's interesting
mm,
is a few people have said, you look different since Maui.
mm,
And I don't see that. I'm, same old, same old.
mm,
But my hair's a little lighter. But there's, I think what was, coming together for me was integration, and, or, well, integration of parts of myself that maybe I just didn't understand, or didn't know what to make of. And when I was saying before that I found this to be one of the hardest integrations post experience, was because it's changed so much, and like so many like little life things, big life things have kind of shifted since then, that it feels like aspects of myself came together and understandings about myself came together, which is great. And that then changed my path forward. So life has felt a bit chaotic and bumpy
mhm,
in my own journey, just because I'm like, where are we going? What are we doing? What is happening? Like, it's just the plan kind of was like, oh, that's gone. Now let's do something different, and
mhm,
taking me in a different direction in certain areas of life. And so that's been, it's just been a lot to, it's not been bad or good. It's just been a lot to kind of sit with. And there's been a lot of discomfort in that, because I like to know what's going to happen. And we just, I think that's the
mhm,
human condition. And I don't really right now. There's a lot of things that I'm kind of just having to be like, okay, well, I guess we'll see, and next right step, and go from there. But, and I know we've talked about this in past Spirit Coffee Talks too, but it's that feeling of like, you can feel the change or the momentum or the energy underneath the surface, but it's not necessarily manifested in your 3D life yet. And that can
mhm,
feel very kind of confronting, or like unsettling, I guess, because
mhm,
it's like, what do I do with this? Um, but one of the other ones that was coming to mind, actually, as you were talking, was when my dad passed away. That was a
mhm,
really big awakening experience for me, because I hadn't had a loss like that. I had lost grandparents, but I hadn't had a loss like that. I hadn't had it be so intertwined with intuitions and knowings. Um, it was, I had premonitions that never really made sense in a way that I could have done anything about his experience. And I did try in many ways and anyways, but um, the it was, all these pieces of understandings that I had had over years, you had had over years, that didn't make sense, but then kind of came together after he passed
Mm-hmm.
away to be like, oh, that was all there, every piece of it. And I just didn't know that. And I think for me, not only we've talked about before, grief is such a transformational experience, even though it's hard and sad and has so much wrapped up in it, it can change everything. And it did change everything in a lot of ways. Um, but also it was this like, holy shit, look what just happened, and how the intuition side of it, the path that it put me on, and again, it's like all about that time and perspective of the longer time has gone on, the more I look back and be like, wow, that changed this and it changed this and it brought up this and it, this happened and it brought this relationship closer and it actually pulled this relationship away, but it had already been struggling. So maybe that was, a part of it. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like it just kind of deconstructed things that I don't know that how that would have played out if it hadn't have happened that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even again in those like hard moments, there can be really beautiful awakenings. Not to say they're not hard still, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that. And I think that's where sometimes people talk about like the silver lining of things, or like everything happens for a reason. And I don't really like saying that, especially in relation to like people's passings and things like that, because
Mm-hmm.
it can just feel so insensitive, regardless of what the truth is. And there's so much that goes into that. But um, I think that's where it, like the saying of like we can find meaning or purpose in things that happen, is true, because
Mm-hmm.
if we uh, address the hard thing, work through it, make changes in life that we need to make, or try to affect change in certain ways, we do that. But we also can kind of take a step back and be like, what am I learning here? Because like you said at the beginning, it's not, oh, you see a spirit at the end of your bed and have this, or like some plant medicine journey that you
Mm-hmm.
have this insane experience that changes your entire life. Like it can also just be like, I'm looking at the world differently now. I'm showing
Mm-hmm.
up differently now. Like that's ascension and awakening too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many paths to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like so many paths. And I think that would be a really great thing to really say, I think, is there isn't one right way.
Mm-hmm.
So like if someone is drawn, excuse me,
What
so
is
the morning of throat issues.
okay?
If someone is drawn to awakening purposefully their consciousness through plant medicines, go for it. Do your
Mm-hmm.
homework, obviously, but go for it. If you want to do that through breath work, if you want to do that through meditation, if you want to do that through travel, if you want to do that through reading ancient texts, if you want to just connect with nature, like there is no one way. And if your attempt is all of the ways, then that too, right? Like I think we have to be cautious of anyone saying that there is only one way to accessing God, source, universe, consciousness, spirit.
Mm-hmm.
There are many. And I know my guides have showed me that over and over. They say like no matter what religion you follow or path you follow, all of those slides, it's like water slides that lead back to the same pool
Mm-hmm.
on the other side, which is
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, high frequency, vibration, understanding, which always ends up then coming back to the frequency of love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really about allowing your journey to unfold. And I think being curious too in those moments of awakening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As you were talking, well, my guides are just saying that the one thing that we haven't really talked about, um, is that like science also creates awakening. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
there have been times where I've learned, through like my somatic training or through yoga training or through like, different kind of biological learnings, scientific based learnings, that it's like the body is crazy. Like the body's crazy. The stuff that it can do, the way, in like when you actually start to deconstruct what is happening inside of us on any given moment, it's actually kind of bananas. Like it blows your mind a little bit if you actually go into it and think about like the bajillions of different things happening at any given moment to put us here on this planet having this conversation. That in and of itself is like it just
Yeah.
blows your mind. On the flip side of that, like what's happening with understanding like space and black holes and our universe. And like, we think we know something, and then science is like, whoopsie doops, actually it's over here. And oh, it's actually over here. Like, it's this ever unfolding, like, oh no, wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. And then we just kind of take it to this
exactly.
next level and next level. And each time people are like, oh my, like, it just kind of blows your mind. To me, those mind-blowing moments of what's real are like moments of awakening and consciousness. Because for me, I believe it's all intrinsically and internet, it's all connected, right? There's no separation between science and spirit. It's just we have not proven in our cute little human brains how we can connect the two. And as we get more and more down the road, those things start to parallel more and more and more to the point where they will inevitably interconnect, I feel. So it's kind of just a matter of time. And even if you just look at the scientific things, it's like, if you're having a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like I could not have ever imagined this, or like, wow, that's incredible. Or you go into a forest, you know, I know we've both had experiences on Vancouver Island where you go into the trees, these like ancient trees, and you're just like, oh, like it just, you can't even put words to what you're feeling or seeing or experiencing. Like, those are ascension moments too, because it's changing the way you look at the world. It's changing the way you interact. And that's really beautiful too. So it's like, it's everywhere. It's in everything, which is cool. It doesn't have to be some big outside of yourself experience.
Yeah. Amazing. It's really cool too. I think once there's more talk about it, how we can embrace it. We can embrace those change points as a good thing, whether it's revealing something that's maybe a little triggering, but it's like pointing to a gateway of more freedom. If it's triggering, if it's not triggering, it's like, hey, you're walking through this door now of freedom. Amazing. Keep going. Right. Like, I think it's just these beautiful times where the universe, spirit can really step in and like fast track us through the awareness in our consciousness of that moment, and then the ripple effects of what it means years to come, right? Yeah.
Have you watched Our Universe on Netflix?
Yes.
There's so many of the like earthy shows on Netflix, but it's like the one with Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
I mean, if Morgan Freeman's narrating it, like, you're bound to have an ascension process, but
it's true.
like, it's just,
or
you could be
David
like
Attenborough
McDonald's
too,
and you're like, yes.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. Mind blowing. But I haven't even watched it all yet, because we'll watch it in like snippets, because we both just sit there like, and it's not even like anything that's new, but it just the way that it's presented, and they talk about like universe and everything happening above us, but then they relate it to an experience of like an animal on the planet and how it parallels. And like, I haven't seen something like that before put so beautifully, that like every time we watch it, I said to John, I'm like, I think I'm gonna need to watch this like 7 times just to like integrate it. So maybe a fun, you know, kind of easy 3D ascension thing to access if you haven't canceled your Netflix memberships yet, with people all angry. I would recommend that one, and I haven't even watched it all yet, but it's like
very good.
It's a gooder.
Yeah,
a gooder.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, this was fun.
It was fun. That was good. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, we will bid you adieu for this week. It's going to be Ginette and I next week, and then we'll be joined back by Lisa. Make sure to check out Ginette's podcast Monday the whatever 20th that it comes out.
20th.
20th. Yeah. So check that out, because she's talking with a guest about Dr. Amy about like, what do we do after the ascension process, or after these kind of mind-blowing moments? It takes like space and integration, and you know, we need to like process, right? Just as we have to process life things, we have to process those kind of fundamental shifts too. So be sure to check that out. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe both our channel and the Ginette's podcast and all the good stuff. And yeah, we will see you next week.
Alrighty. See you later.